Hello everyone, and welcome to the tavern. As you can see, the numbers and the money has gone up just a bit since the last time I recorded. Now originally, this was supposed to be one long video, but the rant between me and my brother over the rules went on a little bit longer than I would have liked, and frankly, releasing a nearly hour-long video I think was a bit much. So instead, please enjoy the second half of this video where we discuss the quick start rules for the Voltron Legendary Defender rule set. Hey everyone, there was a little bit of an update on the Kickstarter, and I figured I'd dump that in right here in order to kind of just show how much more stupid this has become. So first off, we have a new unlock a goal that I don't remember before, but Voltron posters. Alright, I have no real problem with this, to be honest. I mean, I really liked the Battletech posters they made with the Mercenaries Kickstarters, so these will probably be nice. And even when you read the flavor text, you find out that yes, they are add-ons, but anyone who gets a physical release version will get the poster. Well, their choice of a poster. That's fair enough, I guess. I mean, if you're going to do a whole Legendary Defender set or a whole Classic set, you may as well get the poster that comes along with it. So there could be worse add-ons than that, such as... Yep, a limited edition version of the rulebook. Now, we're not even close to 1,000 backers yet, we're still in the 800s, but this is potentially doable. And if you read the flavor text, you will notice that they are add-ons. Essentially, you'd be paying extra in order to have a slightly different cover than the version that'll be sold at stores. That's great. Thanks, guys. Now, who knows? When it gets to the 1,000 backer area, they might make this an option if you buy a physical version, but for now, it is just an add-on, which, how long does it really take to do a slightly different cover? Because beyond that, it doesn't really seem like there's anything else that makes the special edition special. Granted, when we get to the 1,000 backers, maybe they'll reveal it's more than just an alternate cover. But odds are, it's an alternate cover. Whoop-de-doo. And let's face facts, the odds of this even getting into the 150k feels very unlikely. Anyhow, back to the regular video. Alright, so as this blank page shows you, we're clearly in the quick start rules. Oh wait, hold on, let me scroll down. There we go, the role-playing game. Quick start rules. What role-playing game?
My favorite game.
Exactly. And that was the voice of my brother, because yes, we are both pretty pissed off at how garbage these rules are, and how freaking ramshackle this quick start
rules are.
Yes. Because what this should be is your best foot forward. You're trying to impress me, the customer, and instead what I get is a blank page in the very bottom of the role-playing game. So
it feels like there should be a giant image of Voltron here, and then they just didn't.
Yeah.
Sounds like this is a bad scan or something.
Yes. And we'll get to it. So initially you're going to have some information about the universe, stuff you should probably know if you're a Voltron fan, because why else are you playing this? But I appreciate the universe information, you know, it's fine. This is all for Legendary Defender, and maybe you're only familiar with Classic. So if you're not familiar with Legendary Defender, then a little bit of a lore breakdown is helpful. After that, we have the playing the game parts, which at least they explain the dice, which is nice, and the dice icons and how to read them. And then they have the terminology.
6 words, none of which are explained.
Normally in a terminology section, it'd be word, and then the little sentence saying what this means. Not just, here's words you're going to see in this document.
Yes. And then a fun little chart on player group size, which, yeah, is gonna be an issue.
Yeah, because putting 6 people together to play this, 1 for each of the paladins and the GM, is just good luck with that. Even when Legendary Defender was coming out, I don't know if I could grab 5 people together to play this. I think when we discussed this before, I said I could probably get 4 people together. 5 would be kind of tough. It's not impossible, but highly unlikely.
It's gonna be difficult. And even if you do have 5 friends that you regularly play role-playing games with, what's the likelihood all of them like or even know what Voltron is?
Exactly. The feats section. Which,
as if this is a bad scan or something.
Yes. And it does seem like this other half of the page was probably meant to have a picture or something, or possibly more text that just isn't there. Feats, by the way, is essentially an action, but they're calling them feats for some reason. I don't know. It's what they've chosen to do. It's really dumb. It's just more of like the weirdness of this whole thing.
It's a word change that didn't need to be word change. If you notice, big, right at the top of the page, feats, bracket parentheses, the actions of the game. Just call it actions.
Actions. Yeah, you didn't even need the parentheses there. And then, of course, explaining upgrades and downgrades before we've even explained the full how they would be utilized in the game. But at least there is the opportunity to do not what you would think. This is not like...
On the Kickstarter, it labels the dice core system, which is what this uses, as a medium rules system. The actual putting together which dice you need for your skills seems needlessly complex in my eyes, but
yes, and then
others might have a different opinion.
And the upgrades, downgrades basically ups or lowers the dice you use, which makes it even more confusing versus an advantage-disadvantage system that standard D20 games use, which...
And percentile. Percentile also use advantage-disadvantage system.
That's also true. Where all you have to do is add a secondary die that alters the number of the die you're rolling.
The upgrades, downgrades are basically your plus and minus numbers, but instead of plus and minus numbers, you're swapping out a die.
It just makes things needlessly complex and not particularly, user-friendly in my opinion. But I like the rule explanation here of how many steps there are for the detailed explanation of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7 steps, and
then some
determines whether you got
and then successes. Yeah. So, versus, let's just go for your standard D20 game. Your steps are, look at stat sheet. Oh, I have strength of +4. Roll your 20. Oh, I got a 12. +4 is 16. What do I need to match? 12 or better. Yay, I smashed the thing.
I have advantage on this. Roll a second D20.
It's so incredibly simple, and this made it so unnecessarily complicated by adding this layer and this layer and this layer and this layer, and you're like, why? Why did you do that?
Because you're not rolling 1 dice. You aren't even rolling 2 dice like a percentile system. You're rolling 3 dice. And they're not all the same dice.
No.
At least in the Fate system, it's all this. It's all just D6s.
Yes. And we have our standard. We're not even going to get into just the silliness of all these roll options and fatigue and stuff. It's not even worth getting into. But here's the thing I want to go through, because this drove me insane. Standard feats. These are things you could just normally do. Everything requires looking at whatever the base number is. So for this one, it's the D8 stuff.
All standard feats start with the D8.
Then you got to check 2 stats on your character sheet to find out what dice those are, so you can roll all 3 dice.
And if you don't have the skill, it's an automatic D4.
Which just makes this so dumb when you want to just do simple stuff. I want to do a melee attack. Now let me go and grab my D8, my close combat skill, and my agility.
Yeah.
Versus, I want to do a melee attack. Let's roll my D20 and then add in my hit modifier. What's the enemy's defense? Oh, the enemy's defense is 14. But you rolled a 13 and you have a +3, so you hit 16, so you hit the enemy. And I'll go, oh wow, that was super not complicated and something a child could do.
You want to talk about how combat works? Oh, you want to talk about how defense rolls work?
I'll scroll back up.
In order to even actually hit an enemy, first, the enemy does a defense roll, which is their armor plus their agility plus their channeling. Then they roll that number, and that determines their defense. And then you, as the player, need to then roll attack, whether it's ranged or melee, which whatever 3 dice those will be, and try to beat that defense roll. Instead of the enemies just having a solid number for defense.
Which means if you take on 3 Galra grunt soldier dudes, they can all have completely different defenses.
One could have a defense of 3, and the other could have a defense of 19.
Yeah.
Again, we don't actually know what dice that you would roll for the Galra, so they might not ever get that high, but it's a wide variety of what their defense could actually be. And
it makes combat that much slower, because as far as I understand this, you got to roll it every single turn. Slower. So now, instead of just having the DM or GM look at a static number, now every time you're going to have a combat encounter, I need to roll, you need to roll, and we need to figure out whose roll was better.
Yes. And oh boy, they have a 2-hour-long actual play where they go through the little mini adventure at the very bottom of the quick start rules, which we'll get to, and combat took the longest part of that, and I'm gonna say this, as a watcher, it was incredibly boring.
Well, not only that,
I don't know
but
if that's just because the people running it weren't super charismatic, or at least I didn't find them charismatic, or if the game is just boring.
but these are also people who work for Catalyst.
And worked on this game.
So this isn't you and your friends constantly looking back at the rule sheet, figuring out what you need to do. This is like when someone would demo a video game on E3, and they already knew the whole mission, they knew exactly what they needed to do, to a point where people would go, is this pre-recorded? But it's because that person has played that mission 17 times, so that when they're on stage for Xbox, they don't look like someone who doesn't know how to play the game.
Yes.
And it just drags when you have to go through all these unnecessary extra steps.
And the having to fish for the dice, and then upgrading or downgrading your dice. Oh, and I also feel, since we're in talking about combat, I feel I need to mention how wounds work. At least to the extent that I understand how wounds work.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you've ever played a war game, you know what a wound is. You only take so many wounds before you're dead, or down, or whatever terminology they use. Whenever you take a wound in Voltron, you have to downgrade one of your skills, because that doesn't add another complication to this. And of course, you're going to take wounds in combat, so you're never going to downgrade your combat skills.
You'll reduce your charisma or something.
Or your engineering, or athletics. But yes, you're never going to downgrade your combat skills, because why would you?
It's such a dumb system, and then to remember what you've downgraded and stuff like that is going to be such a pain.
You're going to have to keep track of it. They literally, again, I watched the actual play before this. In the actual play, they had someone who had a sheet of just written down what everyone's downgraded, because you needed to do that. Because in combat, you're going to take damage, which means you're eventually going to take wounds, which means you're going to have to downgrade your skills.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to remember what those downgraded skills were until you can rest and recover to eliminate those downgrades.
It's a horrible system that just makes it so much more unnecessarily complicated than it needs to be.
When it could have just as easily been a disadvantage, advantage, +5, -5.
Yes. And again, you could just have an HP bar.
Yep.
Or, you know
Instead
what I mean?
it's wounds.
Yeah, instead of wounds, which is a really weird choice for an RPG.
But having wounds in the Warhammer role-playing games, that makes perfect sense, because it's directly based off of the tabletop game where you have wounds. Having wounds in Voltron doesn't make any sense, just call it HP.
Yeah. And here's the thing is, it's not like in other RPGs there aren't spells or traps that will reduce an attribute or a skill for a set amount of time. That does happen.
There are.
But the thing is, those things occur occasionally versus in a full firefight with, say, 5 Galra versus, 5 Paladins, you're going to end up taking multiple hits in the course of that, and you got to keep track of a whole load of stuff versus, the evil wizard cast Ray of Enfeeblement.
And now you're then enfeebled for the next however long it lasts.
Exactly. The weird thing is, most of these skill things don't even matter because the chart tells you what you need to do an action. You don't need to know what intellect means, or what influence means, or what channeling does. You just need to know that it's a specific die, and then that's the die you have to use because the chart says this is what you have to roll for this action. Or excuse me, this feat.
Apart from roleplay purposes, of course.
Yeah.
But yes, with everything labeled, this is what the action does, this are the stats that are used for it, you don't actually need to know what any of your stats do.
Versus a standard role-playing game, you come across a bridge, and the bridge is rickety. And so they go, well, this will be a dexterity test to make sure you don't fall through the bridge. Or you walk on the bridge, and if, the DM rolls whatever, you have to give me a dexterity save so that to see if whether or not you fell through the bridge into the river or if you caught yourself. We didn't have to go and say, oh, well, hold on, we're crossing a bridge, so let's look at this other sheet. This is a rickety bridge, so we're going to make it a D6 plus your agility plus your athletics.
Agility.
Yeah.
Because since the way the rolling your actions is set up as a 3-dice system, this now means every single action that requires rolling has to be 3 dice.
Yes. Again, unnecessarily complicated and really annoying because you're constantly having to look back at your sheet. Now, yes, in a standard role-playing game, you're going to look at your sheet, because you want to take a look at like your spell list because you're planning out the spell you're going to cast next turn. Or, you know, it's one of those moments of, oh, you see a strange creature, roll on nature. And then you go, wait, what is my nature again?
To see what your nature bonus is. So, like, oh, you see a strange creature, so make me a D6. Actually, no, they literally have it right here. Identify object, D8 plus awareness plus intellect. So you just make one of those, but make it a D6 because it's a strange alien monster.
Yeah. So again, that's really annoying versus just rolling nature or rolling, you know, arcana if it's a magical creature or something along those lines.
And then adding your bonus.
And then you have gifts, because of course people can give each other bonuses, which makes sense. That makes sense with the Voltron team. But again, it adds yet another layer.
Because gifts is a way to, again, cause more upgrades and downgrades. Just like channeling could be used to cause more upgrades and downgrades.
I understand when, say, a tabletop war game takes 2 hours to get through, you know, various parts of combat and what have you. Because it's built around playing that. War game. And you're using...
And every single attack is multiple D6.
Yes. And you're using, you know, an army of, you know, however many versus an army of however many. If you're talking like typical Warhammer, you're going up, what, 8 units versus 8 units at the very least?
Yeah, it'll be like a 2,000 point army versus a 2,000 point army. Your average squad of guardsmen versus let's go guardsmen versus Necrons, because both their base squads are 10 units each. So that's 10 units firing at each other. Plus, depending on how you've outfitted both those squads, that 10 units could be comprised of 5 people with one type of gun and 5 people with a different type of gun. And then if you have any command abilities, or you have any other things you can do. But since this is Catalyst, why don't we just use Battletech as an example?
So, again, if you're doing a Lance versus Lance battle, you essentially have your 4 mechs versus my 4 mechs, and we move them in our movement phase, then we shoot at each other in the shooty phase, and then we have the results phase. And it's very simple. It takes time, because it's a war game type thing, and you know, we have to talk about armor locations and potential criticals, things like that. In a typical D20 or percentile dice game, your combat is resolved instantly. It is, yes. If I hit the orc in the head with my hammer, we calculate that damage, and if that's enough to kill the orc is gone. We don't have to phase or anything like that, and I don't have to worry that, oh, this time the orc's defense is actually higher than last turn. Your hammer just punks on his helmet and does nothing.
And all this does is just make combat longer. And I feel like everyone who's played a tabletop role-playing game knows combat should only be about 20 minutes maximum, because the longer combat goes on, the less invested the players get.
Unless it's a boss fight or something, where you're going to have a longer match.
Then it can be longer because it's a boss fight. But if this is fight against 5 Galra sentries, or a D&D equivalent 5 bandits, that should take no more than 5 to 10 minutes. Otherwise, players are going to start to get bored.
Yeah. Or annoyed if you get into one of those, I keep hitting him and nothing happens. Because it makes your character feel weak, and it makes you feel stupid.
Everyone's missing.
Yes. And people have their stories of just having all the garbage rolls in a row. But you don't want that to be every freaking encounter.
Correct.
Weapons and stuff seem fine-ish. I mean, it's typically what you would expect. There's nothing here.
It's basically what you'd expect.
There's nothing here that makes you go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The critical system has steps, because of course it does.
The critical system is unique in that it's basically a degrees of success system, but they're not calling it degrees of success. Where for every X amount of points over, depending on the weapon or roll, so for some rolls it'll be 3, for some weapons it might be 4, you basically get a critical success. Or every 3 or 4 under, that's basically a critical failure. A more accurate term would be degrees of success over, degrees of success under, and that gives you various bonuses. There we go, done.
Yeah. God, all this artwork is terrible. I'm just gonna say it. I can't stand this artwork.
It looks like screen grabs from the show, and not in a good way.
Yeah. We got a 240i version of the show, and we're gonna take screenshots. Obviously, there's a section here for vehicles and piloting, because obviously you're going to pilot your lion, and you're going to have to pilot...
90% of what you're going to be doing is going to be piloting.
It's what you want to do. What you want to do is get into the robot and blast stuff, and then combine your robots and smash stuff. And I'm glad there's on-foot stuff. There should be, especially for Legendary Defender. A lot of on-foot missions. But man, this is like where the meat of the game is supposed to be, and it's just as complicated. So it doesn't make it easier when you're in this mode. And I'd even go to the point of... Oh god, that art. I'd even go to the point of if you had multiple people playing and you're in Voltron mode, you're suddenly stuck in that position where everyone's like, oh no, use the missiles. No. Use the flamethrower. No, use the laser shot. Like, if you're gonna have to figure out a way amongst you and your friends to figure out who does what, or whoever's playing Shiro just has to yell at everybody. We're doing this, deal with it. And like, yeah, that's one of the problems of this.
You're gonna need actual teamwork to make Voltron pull off something that will vary from group to group. But in some groups that like super teamwork, I've been in other groups where like the broody rogue wants to go off and do their own thing because they're the brooding rogue.
And so it falls in that problem with this game of, yes, that is realistic to the show. They must have teamwork to make Voltron do the Voltron stuff. But at the tabletop, it could be a nightmare.
Massive nightmare.
And there's little things they brought over, not exactly the same, but Battletech adjacent stuff like damage to the passengers, which I do appreciate. Because in Battletech, your pilot can get hurt if you're playing specific rule sets. And I like that as a way of, the pilots should be able to take damage occasionally, and how does that affect playing? I do think that's one of the positives, because I don't want this to be entirely negative. But man, there's a lot of negative here. If you can't tell, we are highly frustrated at this rule set.
It's unnecessarily complicated in all the worst ways.
Blank page for no reason.
Which blank page is that?
No.
Go one up.
Okay, it's going up.
The formation test, because it's almost as if this is a bad scan or something.
Oh, this is the one where it's at. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you might notice that there's a chunk of the page here missing.
It's not actually missing.
No.
It's just so light, it's illegible.
Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. It's completely illegible.
Like turn your head a little.
I don't even know how you screw up a scan this bad. And by the way, was there no QA on this? Did they not flip through this real quick just to make sure it looks good before doing your professional Kickstarter for a professional company?
This is Catalyst. What did you expect? I'm sure they're still handing out people stuff from the last Battletech Kickstarter.
They are. Some people still haven't gotten all their stuff yet.
This certainly is the role-playing game.
It is. And so if you really want to know how Voltron Power works, good luck.
Wait to buy the PDF.
Yeah. And then we get blank page, exclamation point. But I'm sure that's supposed to...
This is a bad scan or something.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming this whole page is like a photo or a picture or something, but for
I would assume it's some sort of art, because we've had multiple things where there's just large blank space. That's probably art that somehow didn't go over for some reason, or was purposefully removed for some reason.
My theory is that this is actual bad scans from the actual rulebook.
Oh, this has to be a bad scan.
They didn't make this from like scratch. They had the rulebook and they just kind of
Copy and pasted some pages together.
Exactly. So we get a few of the other like little abilities and stuff here, which is nice that they have that. That's,
we get all the cool Voltron powers.
Yeah, it's required. I do want to play as the robot. That's kind of an important part of the game.
You get to Voltron. All the powers look cool. Voltron looks cool. Well, I mean, the artwork is
terrible in this.
The artwork, but I mean, Voltron in concept would look cool.
Yeah, just put your little toy on the table. Then we have Quintessence, which is essentially your magic equivalent, which makes sense. They do use that power occasionally in the show, so sure, we have it.
It'll primarily be something the Gara are going to be using against you.
Yeah, because they have the shaman as one of the characters, or the druid, I believe they call it, is one of the characters.
Yeah, it's called the druid.
And only, I think, 2 Voltron pilots actually have a Quintessence ability in these rules.
And neither of them are attack-based.
Yep. But still, at least they gave you a couple of characters that have it, so you can mess around with it when you get to the sort of adventure they give you.
Which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's just kind of your standard magic, apart from the whole, again, the terrible dice system. It's your standard magical attacks.
Yeah. And the fact that they give you some elemental damage information here, which I think is nice. Just, it shows that there's layers to this. And then we have the introduction mission. Before we say anything...
Page and a half.
I was going to say, yeah, we need to show the page and a half of text. That's your entire adventure right there, people.
Yep.
It's very basic. It is, you're going to look for the thing. You come across a
You're
gallery
going to be
base.
lions the entire time. There's not actually an on-foot section.
Which is stupid because they gave us on-foot stuff.
Yes.
So unless you're going to homebrew that
lions
section...
the entire time, and maybe form Voltron if you want to form Voltron.
Yeah.
Which you're gonna form Voltron because this is the Voltron RPG. Every single mission should end with Voltron fighting a giant monster. Which, guess what? There's no giant monster fight.
There is not. I will scroll down here to some of the enemy stats.
Literally the 4 opponents.
Where are they? Opponents. Yeah. Here's your 4
Sentry
people.
and the Druid, which are gonna be on speeders, and then the Robo Drones.
Yeah.
There's no Death Black Beast Man. There's no big giant monster with like multiple arms and like a laser sword or whatever.
And also Princess Fala has no stats. So
Also true.
Whatever her name is in English.
We probably should have looked that up.
Well, it doesn't matter. No one's gonna care. Let me know in the comments if you know what the princess's name is in English. There. Point is, you gave us a Voltron thing where we don't get to fight one of the, and I will use the American word, Robeasts.
Death Black Beast Man sounds way cooler.
Sounds way cooler, but we don't have one. We don't have a giant kaiju to fight. We have soldier dudes.
Because that's what you would want in your introductory mission.
Yes. What this should have been set up as, if they took more than 5 minutes to write the text, is you would have an on-foot section, and then, oh no, they have summoned forth one of their kaijus, and we need to form Voltron. Let's do it. That's how you do this, because it gives you all 3 phases of combat type.
And it can teach you every single thing you need to know about all 3 phases.
And get you hyped for more adventures. But no, we could also just have be in the lions, maybe form Voltron, and here's some generic goons for you to fight.
Yeah, you fight some goons while gathering power crystals. Then you track them to their base. Then you fight goons at the base and destroy the base.
Yep. It's super exciting.
That's the entire mission right there, summarized in 2 sentences.
And it's sad because one of the things that could save this game is the mission structure, to have something interesting here to make you excited about playing. And it doesn't have it. Now, people can go and say, oh, well, if this was classic, your classic structure for every episode is, I'm like, yes, I know. Problem of the day, get inside the lions, form Voltron, fight kaiju, problem is resolved.
Isn't that what you want?
Yeah.
Isn't that why you like Voltron?
Yes. Now, it's cool the fact that if you do an RPG to add in more extended on-foot sections where characters' secondary abilities can be really, really helpful. And having different choices to use your weapons. And do I want to go melee or do I want to go ranged? And the paladins get their cool gear.
The lions have.
And the cool weapons the lions have. There's so many options, especially in Legendary Defender, where they really expanded out the weapon list for everything. And yet, this is the half-assed version they gave us. It's so pathetic. You know, we have rules that unnecessarily lengthen the game, and then you give us an introduction mission that doesn't even give us a freaking kaiju to fight.
Which is lame.
And it falls in that category of just how lazy could you get with this? And the answer is incredibly. It's the same thing I was saying with the Kickstarter itself, where the information in both versions of the rules could have been combined into one book. Easily.
It should have been.
And then maybe your choice would be choice of cover. Do you want classic or do you want legendary? And that'd be fine.
The correct answer is classic, let's be honest.
Yeah, the correct answer is classic because legendary went to garbage. But the thing is, they made it 2 to force you to buy 2 of the same thing. And that,
as it says in both the Kickstarter and the very start of the Quick Start rules, the rules are exactly the same. It's only the setting, weapons, and characters that are different. And missions as well, of course, because different setting.
And it's just disgusting. It's lazy. It's trying to take advantage of the customer.
Predatory, let's be honest.
It's very predatory. As I said in the first section of the video, giving a stretch goal of a mission in the rule book is like taking a piece of a game out and selling it back to me as DLC. That's what this is. It has these predatory monetization type stuff, but not your standard, Wizards of the Coast, let's do blind boxes for the 50th anniversary. This is the more like the typical version of we're going to cheap out as much as possible and then sell you the other parts that should have been standard part of this from the get-go.
Oh, you mean like predatory DLC practices?
Yes. Because you can say what you want about Catalyst and their treatment of Battletech, and I have. But the one thing you can't say about that Kickstarter, the Mercenaries box was a completed box. All the minis were just extra minis. You know, you were not sitting there going like, oh, well, we are going to expand the Mercenaries box with adding minis to it. Like, minis should be in the Mercenaries box to begin with. You know,
It really should be.
We're going to do the Mercenaries box, and we're going to sell you the support cards separately. I'm like, the support cards are the key part of this rule. You can't sell those to me separately. What the hell are you talking about?
Honestly, I'm shocked that they aren't selling us minis.
Yeah, the fact that minis aren't on the list is weird.
The board game is. That's why the board games and the Kickstarters that's where all the minis are.
It might be. Unless one of the stretch goals is, hey, would you like a small Voltron to put on the board? I'm like, it'd be nice, yeah.
That should come standard.
This is so pathetic and poorly done, and it feels like a cash grab.
It really does.
That the Catalyst got the rights to this, and they were like, all right, cool, what's the fastest, easiest thing we can do, and hope that dumb people pay for it.
And they already have.
Yep.
As it says on the Kickstarter, funded in under an hour.
Yeah, they got $25,000 in less than an hour. I don't know who's buying this, because Legendary Defender went to crap, so I don't think there's a lot of fans, especially this many years after the last season. You're going like, oh my gosh, I want to continue the adventures of Shiro, Lance, Keith, etc. And while I do love Classic, I have no real drive to play Classic. I'm not sitting there going like...
Especially when games like Mecha Stellar exist, which for those that don't know, is Super Robot Wars
as a tabletop
war game.
Yes. And it's awesome. And it's free.
It's super awesome. And it's free. Now, it doesn't have rules for everything, but you can easily homebrew your own. Hell, if you really wanted to, you could take Battletech, something Catalyst already makes, and homebrew Voltron with that.
You could. It'd be complicated, but it would be doable.
It'd be a little more complicated, but you could.
The point is there's ways of playing Voltron as a tabletop thing without actually having to buy this. It's sad because I wanted this to be good. I was like, you know what? They could come up with some cool way of making this interesting, or an interesting, rule set that could really catch my interest. And they fumbled on every single way, to the point that the only thing that seems good in this entire set is the board game, because A, it's going to come with minis, hopefully, and not tokens.
It should, it's a board game.
Yeah, it could come with tokens though, but it should come with minis. And if it's set up like that Jaws game, that could be really fun. Let me have 5 turns or whatever to power up.
The Jaws game.
Yeah, let me have my 5 turns to power up, and then let's do the fight the kaiju battle, which is what you want to do with this. And you want to finish him off with the 10 King sword.
Blazing sword. They have in the rules, but that's Legendary Defender, so I don't know if that counts.
It's the same in both. It's Blazing Sword in both.
Okay.
I'm sorry, people. I do quite enjoy Go Lion. So because of that, I do use a lot of Go Lion terms, so bear with me on that one. Should have said that earlier in the video.
You really should have. As the Go Lion theme is just playing right now.
Yeah. I think that kind of wraps up our thoughts and why we're having issues with this Kickstarter and why it bothers us so much. And what I'm going to say to everyone out there who's watching this, support this if you absolutely want to, like you really are a hardcore fan, or you're tempted on that board game like I am, fine. But don't go and give like all your money for the stupid pins and the dice set and all this other garbage. Catalyst doesn't deserve your money. This game is garbage. Oh, this could have been good. And it
could have been really good.
That's the biggest problem. When you know something could have been good, and this is what we get.
And you can see the aspects of good within.
Yep. Let me know what you think about these rules in the comments, and if you think this game is actually going to be fun when you put it on the tabletop. Because, as far as we can tell, the answer to that is no.
No, not really.
And if you don't believe us, go watch that long play. That'll convince you.
It's 2 hours and quite boring.
So until next time, Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out my other videos, but most importantly, remember, I'll see you at the tavern.